Hey everybody, welcome to episode 26 of the Go Get Outside podcast. This is your host, Jason Milligan. If you're listening to this on the day that it was released, April 1st, 2016, then you may have noticed it is April Fool's Day, and maybe you are wondering if I'm going to play some sort of hilarious April Fool's Day prank on you. Well, I am not, because I did not think of any hilarious April Fool's Day pranks, and I'd rather do no prank than some half-assed lame April Fool's Day prank. Enjoy your April Fool's Day however you like, but you ain't getting any pranks here. On today's show, I promised that this season we would have some multi-person interviews. Well, today is the first of those multi-person interviews. We will be talking with Fresh Off the Grid. That is composed of Megan McDuffie and Michael Van Vliet. They are a couple living out of their car, traveling across the U.S. and Canada. And maybe you've come across them on FreshOffTheGrid.com online, where they post travel and backcountry recipes, along with guides to different areas and just all sorts of information about their travels. The three of us recorded this at the end of 2015, right before Christmas time. They just happened to be in town for the holidays, and they agreed to meet me at Little Landers Park here in Tujunga, California, where the three of us gathered around a small park bench and attempted to hold this conversation despite occasional interruption from a very nice homeless lady. So let's head a few months back in time, back to Little Landers Park, and talk to Fresh Off the Grid. Cue the music.
I'm Megan McDuffie. I'm a Los Angeles native, but I'm currently living on the road, exploring the United States for a year with my boyfriend, Michael Van Vliet.
Yeah, my name is Michael Van Vliet. I'm originally from the East Coast, but have been living out in Los Angeles now for the last 10 years or so. Megan and I met about 3 years ago. From that very first time that we met, we immediately started talking about how we wanted to quit our jobs and go on a big road trip. So I think that there was always this sense that we wanted to go travel and see stuff from the very beginning of our relationship. It took us about 3 years-ish to decide to commit to that, but we're currently traveling the U.S. and Canada. We were up in Canada recently, and basically trying to take an entire year to go about the country and sort of see what's out there.
So you're just a couple of hippie slackers, that's what you're saying,
yes.
right? Just two hippie slackers that found each other.
That's true. Well, I mean...
Depends on who you ask.
Right, exactly. No, we had been living, very normal, lives in LA in terms of, both of us had 9-to-5 jobs right out of college. We started working immediately, bounced around from a couple different jobs here and there. And, I think at the time we had both been working at jobs for like 6 or 7 years. So companies for like a little while. And we were just getting sort of really, feeling like we wanted to kind of have a change of pace and that we wanted to kind of do something a little different. I think that in LA in particular, you kind of get into this routine of working someplace and then using that to pay for rent, and then that rent pays for the house that you live in, that you can go back to work, and you have this sort of secular thing where you just keep doing it. And if you're not really passionate about the work that you're doing, it sort of behooves you to find different work. So we were living, very, traditional job, or having very traditional jobs, and now we've moved on. Very non-traditional lifestyle.
Yeah.
So together you have created something called Fresh Off the Grid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So explain how that came about and exactly what that is, because it allowed both of you to quit your jobs and live out of a car, right?
Yep. So Fresh Off the Grid is a project that we started actually before the trip. And what it is, it's a website about camp cooking. It's all about how to take recipes that you probably already like and enjoy at home and make them work for you in a very minimalist setup. We use a 2-burner Coleman camp stove for all of our cooking, all of our recipe testing, and so that's what Fresh Off the Grid is.
Yeah, we feel that cooking for us was always a big part when we were living, in an apartment. When we got on the road, well, we had been camping, just recreationally throughout there, and cooking was always a big part of that. So we really feel that trying to share some of that way, just techniques of trying to cook on the outdoors, or just different type of recipes. A lot of people, I think, there's some of the barrier to entry to getting into camping is, I don't know what to eat, or food is bad, or that they don't know what to make. And so we were trying to come up with a resource for people to kind of break that down a little bit, so people don't feel like it's that crazy to do, and that there's all these different sort of minimalistic setups that you can do that actually are not that difficult to pull off at all.
So give me an example. What's the kind of thing I'd find on there?
So one of the big things that we do is sort of one-pot meals, something that basically you are trying to make the entire meal just using a single pot and trying not to remove anything from the pot during that process. So there's a lot of pastas where if you get the ratio of water to pasta to whatever else your ingredients are perfect, and you measure it out right, you just put it all in there, boil, and then it's done. You can do the same thing with some rices, a couple lentil dishes, but trying to keep it all in one pot, because not only is that making this thing simpler for you, just everyone hates doing dishes, whether you're camping or not, but camping especially, because it's just miserable to do dishes out there.
Are you one of those that cleans your pots with dirt? Or are you one of those that brings soap? Or because the thing with the dirt is it works great until the next day when you've got a pot full of that still has dirt in it.
We do not clean with dirt. We have cast iron, and a lot of people, I think, advocate using some sort of salt in there to clean it. I would say that we're not the best. We don't treat our cast irons the best, but no, we keep it down to one pot. We can kind of do a little light rinse with water. And get it out. But
hot water.
Hot water. Yeah, that's the other big thing, is that heating the water to do your dishes afterwards is really makes a lot of sense. And I feel for the longest time I would just try to wash the dishes cold and was miserable and didn't really understand why. But it's the obvious answer is that it's cold water. So
the great thing about the cast iron is you also have a weapon against bear attacks at that point.
It's true. Yeah.
Which was a bigger concern in some of the northwestern U.S. than it is down here. But
you said you've also gone to Canada, right? So
yeah.
You're starting to get in grizzly country around there.
We were acutely aware that we were in grizzly country.
They were acutely aware that you were making delicious meals they would like to eat.
Probably. Yeah, no, we were up in Canada, and that was sort of a bigger fear of ours, is that, there's a whole set of preparations you should do when you're in bear country, what exactly you should, whether you're car camping or backpacking, but to minimize scent, minimize food. I think there's a whole way of trying to wash your dishes in a way that's just very, eco-conscious, but also reducing your scent profile. So we definitely were trying to adhere to that the best we could when we were up there.
Were you doing the thing where you pour the hot water back into your skillet and you clean it up and then you drink it so you can leave no trace?
We've heard that as well. Yes, that is.
I noticed you said you've heard it, not that you practice it.
We have heard of that. We have made a decision that may be just too much for us. But no, yeah, you have to scoop out the hard, any food matter that's left in there, make sure that's out, that goes in your trash, to try to just minimize as much as possible. I mean, drinking it is different. We do the spray method where you try to disperse as much as possible.
That is the method for your toothpaste. According to Leave No Trace, if you spit your toothpaste in an arc, that's all right. So I think food matter should probably be okay.
I think it could be fine. Yeah. We didn't have any issues, so
I'm sure someone can write in and let us know how wrong.
I'm sure someone with more bear knowledge than we do will have thoughts on it.
But we never saw a grizzly, so I suppose
that's right.
Right. So clearly, that's evidence that you did everything right.
Perfect. Yes.
So you started this website just for fun before you decided to embark on this idea that some people probably would say is crazy. Mm-hmm. How did you get from website to let's quit the job? And how are you sustaining yourself? Is the website sustaining you?
So we started the website maybe 6 months, no, not even 6 months, 3 months before we left on the trip. They were sort of two separate entities. So we started the website, but we also were going to go on the trip. It just happened to be that the two things worked out together very well. So the trip was something that we had actually been planning to do for a long time and in a more serious way over a couple of months, 6 months to a year. We saved a lot. We cut a lot of expenses down in order to be able to walk away from our corporate jobs and not starve or run out of gas. But along the way, we've picked up freelance work. Michael's a writer and I do photography, so we've been teaming up together to generate content for different companies, telling stories about travel and food and our experiences in the outdoors. So while I wouldn't say that is fully sustaining us, we are using some of the money that we saved. It's kept us busy.
And to extend the trip, I think the idea is that we've got some amount of money that we have saved that we want to do this trip for. And any amount of money we can generate during the trip is going to help us either extend the trip or sort of increase the quality of living on the trip.
Yeah.
So I guess this might be an interesting point to mention, just the type of vehicle we're using to travel around the country.
A big Hummer limousine,
right. Yes.
Correct?
Big, massive vehicle. No, we are currently in a 2000 Ford Focus hatchback, 2-door.
with a little Thule.
The Thule top box on the top, right, with a little cargo box. This is the car that I've owned since I was 16 years old. It has over 215,000 miles on it right now.
So this is going to turn into a Ford commercial?
I think so. I think that it definitely is a testament there to this vehicle. But no, I've had it for a really long time. I mean, it was my daily commuter. This is what I drove all around LA with for the longest time. The car just won't die. And for the longest time, we wanted to do this big trip. And I think that we had gotten in our head through whatever means that you need to have this really great van to go on a trip, or you need to have an awesome RV, or you need to, there's a lot of, people are way into the Westphalias, into all of these vintage things that then they build out and make them even more amazing. And we had sort of given into that idea that we needed to do that. And because of that, we felt that we could never go on the trip because we never would have that money to be able to do that. And so years would go by, a year I think, that we had sort of thought about, it wouldn't be great if we had a van. And then I think at some point we're just like, what if we didn't have the van? What if we just did it in this car? What if we just traveled and the traveling was the part we were after, not having the really cool vehicle?
I mean, in theory, right, you'd spend as little time in the vehicle as possible. The vehicle is just to get you to
Absolutely.
point A and point B, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And so that was a really empowering moment when we were just like, we can do it in this car. I don't know, there's no reason, we were really just throwing up barriers to prevent us from doing it. So I think that, so we're in this car. We've made a couple modifications to it so we can sleep in the car, actually. I'm 6'5", which is pushing it, but in terms of being able to fit in it. But we have got a great setup in there where, we both can sleep in the car. I can lay down fully extended. I don't have to curl up in the fetal position, which is kind of great. So there's a lot you can do with the vehicle that you own.
So what kind of modifications did you make so you can sleep? Are you sleeping in the front seats or the back seat, or how'd you modify it?
No, so what we did was we took the back seats out entirely and we made these custom boxes. So basically what you do is you push the front seats all the way forward and then you lean the back, the backrest forward as well. And we have these boxes that hold our food and our cooking supplies that we had custom built to fit into where your passengers' feet would go. And that creates a flat surface.
So you're not picking up any hitchhikers along the way?
No, and I felt so bad because we've seen a couple of hitchhikers. It was raining in Banff, and there's this guy on the side of the road. I'm like, we literally have no room for you.
We're so sorry.
I did a road trip earlier this year where I had my car full of camera gear and camping gear and canyoneering gear and climbing gear.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. I would see backpackers on the road, and I would think, I can only fit myself in all this stuff in the car. I can't pick anyone up.
It's like a special kind of guilt.
They don't know that, though.
Right. You're just an asshole.
Yeah.
They see this big car, they don't know that it's full of stuff. You just whiz by.
Oh, yeah. When we were in Washington in September, we drove past a bunch of PCT hikers trying to hitch into town, and my dream is to hike the PCT one day, and I'm driving past these guys. I'm like, this is my moment to pay it forward, and I can't.
That's all right. You'll pay for it in a few years when it's your turn and no one picks you up.
I know.
Exactly. Welcome back.
Yeah, so anyways, on top of that, we have this mattress. It's like a full-sized foam mattress, so that's kind of the mod that we made to make a bed and also why we can't pick people
Yeah,
up.
so it's a full-size bed, foam mattress from IKEA that fits in there perfectly, which has been great to get some actual decent sleep during the night. It's nice to sleep in the car for a variety of reasons, especially when it's raining, when it's really windy out, when it's cold.
When you're in bear country.
When you're in bear country, just a hard-sided vehicle just does a wonder to ease your mind before you go to bed.
Well, until you see one rip the door off of the hinges,
Right,
and then you might change your mind.
Yeah, then that might be, well...
Then you better hope you can get to the key to the ignition as quickly as possible.
So that is the issue with the modification we have right now, is that the car is either in sleep mode, because the seat's got to be all the way forwards, or it's in drive mode. So it takes about 4 minutes to kind of, switch it from one to the other. So were we under duress and a bear was trying to attack us? I don't know. I'm sure we could speed that up to be 2 minutes, but...
Are you only sleeping in the car, or do you sometimes camp, or what's the plan?
On occasion we camp. We've actually gone on a couple of backpacking trips to fire lookout towers, which has been really cool because you get the experience of backpacking, hiking to the top of the mountain and sleeping up there, but there's a cabin up at the top. So that's kind of been a neat thing as well.
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever done something like that. I've known you could do it, that they have some of these fire lookout that are decommissioned, and you can go up, and some of them you have to rent ahead of time. Some of them are first. The one we went to in Washington was first come, first serve. And so we got up to the top, and we had intended to camp. We'd brought all the supplies to camp, but little did we know there's just a cabin up there waiting for us that we could just go into. So that was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Not too often you show up somewhere and someone's built a home just for your use.
There's a house up here that I can live in. So that was nice. So we've done a little bit of that. But yeah, by and large, we sleep in the car. When you're on a road trip like we're doing, sort of a routine becomes sort of a part of how you kind of keep things, clutter-free and stuff. So once you get in a routine of sleeping in the car, it just sort of becomes second nature. That's where you end up at the end of the night. But yeah, and it's allowed us to kind of, camp in, I guess, climates that would really be miserable. It was in British Columbia. It was, dumping rain for a week, I think. And that would have just been uncomfortable to deal with for that long, and a couple cold areas.
I've been in that exact region dealing with nonstop rain for days, camping, and it gets miserable.
Ironically, it was the area we were on was called the Sunshine Coast, which is just north of Vancouver. Which in name only.
That was them being optimistic.
Yeah. Right.
If we name it this, then maybe it will happen.
Right.
I think maybe people will come and they'll love it, and it could probably is a real estate scam. Someone just thought they'd call us the Sunshine Coast.
It's kind of like if someone in Arizona tries to sell you beachside property.
Yeah, right.
So it is currently December of 2015. Mm-hmm. When did the trip begin?
The trip started for us August 1st of this year. We intend to try to go for the full year. So we've done sort of a big loop right now, basically from Los Angeles up the West Coast into British Columbia, cut over into Alberta, and then came down the Rockies all the way to New Mexico, and then came back to LA. We have got family here. We wanted to spend Thanksgiving with them, catch up with friends. This is sort of the intermission of the trip. I think that we had designed sort of the route of this trip, that this could be a potential bailout point, that should the car have died or we just totally weren't digging it anymore, that we could say, let's try to find jobs in LA again. But thankfully, I think that neither one of us are of that mindset. So we're excited to kind of get back on the road, but we are taking a little bit of a break.
That's
now.
Good news. 4 months in, and you're not ready to bail on your 12-month trip.
Yeah, right. But I think that if we were somewhere up in the hinterland of, Canada right now, and that realization came, I think that'd be bad. That we would, if we didn't want to keep going with it. No, we're taking a little bit of an intermission here. Also letting a little bit of winter get behind us. We were out in the Rockies mid to late November, and it's cold. It's very cold out there. I think it's easy to forget in Southern California just how cold the rest of the country gets. So yeah, we're just kind of, hanging out for a little bit. I think we're planning on getting back on the road somewhere in February to just sort of head off across the Southwest, hit up Texas, the South proper, in which neither one of us have ever been to, and then working our way up the East Coast to New England, which is where I'm from, and so I've got some relatives up there, and then hopefully even on further to Eastern Canada, and some of the really cool remote sections up there along the Eastern Canadian coast. So that's the big plan at the moment, although...
Is the goal to cover the entire country and Canada? Or just whatever comes to mind? Are you trying to stay away from itineraries?
We're trying to keep it as flexible and open as possible. We've done a fair amount of traveling with our 2-week vacations over the years. And one of the things that we've always found is that if we, try to pack too much in, then invariably you're either going to do it all but feel like you didn't actually do anything because you're so worried about getting to points B and C that you can't enjoy point A. So we're trying to just keep it a little loose. So we have a general kind of idea of where we'd like to go in terms of direction, but not specific kind of itineraries yet.
Yeah, I find with trips, if you don't plan them and you just show up, they either work out amazingly and everything works out better than you could have planned it, or it all falls apart. It's one or the other.
Yeah. I think on this trip we've had an ebb and flow of that, where we tried to hyper-plan stuff in certain stages and we're frustrated. And in some areas it came off okay. And then also we've like kind of not planned at all. We've come to the decision no matter what you do, there's a chance that it could all go bad.
Right.
So you just have to get comfortable with that. That really at any point this could just all go terrible. But, I don't think we've had any major issues. But yeah, I think that when you do try to overplan something like this, the pacing is so critical to try to get into a good rhythm. And when you have too much committed and you're trying to get to these things, you, as you were saying, is you fall out of the moment. And you start to be living for sort of, we have to get to this, we have to get to the next step, and then that's really not much different.
It becomes a checklist.
Well, that's really not much how different than you do at a daily, working at a job or doing anything, right? So, like, the whole point of this trip is to try to get away from a little bit of that. So, yeah, I think that it's important to kind of, give yourself some space and sort of plan your spontaneity a little.
So what sorts of things are you doing on the trip? Are you stopping in towns? Are you going to do particular activities in certain places? Has it been a little bit of everything?
It's been a little bit of everything for sure. We've definitely, there's a couple of towns that we have known that we want to stop in, so we've done that. But for the most part, we kind of stick to national parks, state parks, kind of wilderness areas. I've lived in a city my whole life, and I think that I've kind of hit a point where I'm wanting some space from that, and so it's been nice to not have to be in a city all of the time. So, we are running this website, and so we do have to spend some amount of time at a Starbucks, using Wi-Fi and plugging in and stuff like that. But when we can get out, we do. Yeah, for the most part, we're, spending our time, hiking, and, if there's a hot spring in the area, we will find it, and
Right.
What else have we been doing?
Yeah, I think that it's just sort of a general touring where whatever of interest kind of comes to mind and you come into an area, I think that we've definitely been sort of open to whatever a certain area has to offer. If there's some just good eating to be done, if there's like something that's, some great hiking or just some interesting vistas to go see, we're happy to kind of go out of our way to go check out something. We also try to listen a little bit to local suggestions. I think when you get going in a conversation with somebody at a coffee shop or wherever, gas station, and they say, wouldn't it, you guys should go out here, this thing is amazing, right? You should totally go check out this hot spring, or you should go check out this sandwich shop somewhere. When you have a really strict itinerary, you never have time to do those things. Yeah, I'd love to, but we got to be, the next state tomorrow, so we got to get going.
Right.
So being able to kind of take up people on their suggestions has been sort of interesting, and letting that sort of guide us.
I have kind of a funny story from when I was on my road trip earlier this summer. So I was on the road for 3 weeks, and I had a few specific places I needed to be. But in between that, I could kind of do what I wanted, stop where I wanted, drive as quickly or slowly as I wanted. At one point, I was in Wyoming for a day. It was actually for the first season of this podcast, I had met a friend there to record an interview. And then I decided to stop in a park to download the data on that card, just some random neighborhood park. And these old ladies were in the park, and they asked me to help them move like a picnic table. And I was like, okay, so I helped them move this picnic table. And then they said, hey, at 5 o'clock, we're going to be doing line dancing, which yes. I have no interest in line dancing. They're like, you should come. You should come line dance. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And I left the park, and then I was like, wait a second, I'm in Wyoming, and just some random old ladies are asking me to go to learn line dancing from them. I need to go back. So I drove back to the park. I don't think they expected me to show up. So I spent 2 hours with these older ladies teaching me to line dance.
That's
and
amazing.
Then at some point, the YMCA song came on, and none of them knew how to do the YMCA, so I got to teach them how to do the YMCA. And it turned out to be like one of my favorite memories from that whole trip, was just this goofy little thing that happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, some of the best things that we have done have just come from being open to saying yes to opportunities that come up, whether there are things that we would have planned or known about ourselves.
Yeah, you just have to kind of be open to stuff that's outside of your comfort zone, stuff that's just sort of, you have to kind of give yourself up to the trip a little bit. Like, you're not really, you're just sort of a part of this thing, and some stuff's going to happen to you, and it's just all about just showing up and being part of the experience. So,
and maybe if it makes you uncomfortable, maybe that's more reason to try it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
Within limits.
Right. Yeah.
I agree. But yeah, no, there's very interesting about like pacing. What do you do? How do you figure out what you do? I think that, yeah, you just kind of let it come to you, and then that's how you do it.
So you've been on the road for 4 months now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are there any particular occurrences that stand out, any particular memories so far that pop to mind right away?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple, kind of riffing off that whole idea of like letting things come to you when they come.
And it better not be a line dancing story.
No, it's not.
Although when you make it to Texas, you may have some of those.
I'm sure.
I do love the Virginia Reel.
We were coming down south on the Rockies. We had actually just slipped into Yellowstone like the last couple of days before it was closing. Well, most of the park closes down for snow. They were already getting a fair bit of snow there when we were there.
Do they just close particular roads, or do they close access to the whole park?
No, they close just some of the big roads. And this year, I think it's every year it changes on what type of roads they actually close. This year, it sounded like they were closing basically 90% of the roads.
Yeah, all of the roads, with the exception of the northernmost road.
Old Faithful was going to be cut off, and all these,
you could basically like go to Mammoth Hot Springs and that campground, and that was going to be like the extent of it.
So could you still get backcountry permits or anything like that?
I think you can.
Yeah, I think starting in December they open it up to like snowmobiles and like cross-country skiers.
And backcountry, I'm sure they allow. But I think they had a huge year this year. This was like a record-breaking year for Yellowstone, so I think there was some attempt to like let the wildlife get a break for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we were there, and our plan, which we had come up with, was to kind of keep pushing south and to kind of cross from Yellowstone down into the Grand Tetons. The weather was just not helping us at all. It was really kind of sketchy in Yellowstone and a couple of the passes going over the Continental Divide. And to get down to the Tetons, it was going to be really, really, a high pass. And it was going to be, we didn't have change for the car. So we just weren't comfortable doing that. So we're like, all right, we have to find out where we're going. And so we pulled up the weather app and just was looking around there's a big snow system that was coming in through the Rockies. And so, Idaho's out, Wyoming's out.
So we basically just looked at the map and were like, where's the good weather? And
there was none.
Well, there was 72 degrees and sunny in the Dakotas. So we hightailed it to North Dakota.
Yeah, we drove all the way across Montana to get to the Dakotas, which we didn't even plan on going to. We didn't think we were going to, I don't know, it wasn't one of the things that we thought we were going to do on this trip. But the weather sort of pushed us in that direction. We decided to go that way. And our intention is to go to sort of the Black Hills in South Dakota. And we're getting just out of Billings, I think. Somehow, I don't know how this happened, but we somehow didn't check exactly which road we were supposed to be on. They have a lot of long, straight roads out there, and if you're not paying attention, there's no landmarks to let you know you're going in the wrong direction.
The way you're saying this makes it sound like it was your fault, just so you know.
Okay.
I don't know how this happened,
Look,
but just somehow...
It could have been somebody's, this is a team effort. Anyways, we took a wrong turn, and 60 minutes in, discovered that we were actually going to North Dakota, not South Dakota, which is
all right, because you didn't have an itinerary.
Exactly.
It didn't really matter. So then we keep going and we get into North Dakota, and then we pull up on the map Teddy Roosevelt National Park, which happens to be there. We've never heard of this park, but we rolled in there and it was just amazing. It was this amazing park. Teddy Roosevelt during his youth had spent some time in the Dakotas ranching. We're both big fans of him as an individual, and his cabin is there on the land that he built himself, and there's this whole sort of historical element to the park that ties it really well together. And it's gorgeous badlands out there. There's bison everywhere, there's prairie dogs. It's sort of incredible. And so here's this place that we just had an amazing time at that we had no idea existed. Surprised to have found it. So
it's cool because what got you there was weather's bad, where can we go that weather's good, and then you take a wrong turn and end up somewhere you didn't expect that's probably cooler than where you were headed.
Right.
Absolutely.
You have to be open to that stuff. I think that if you were to try to force it, say, we're going to the Tetons anyways, we would have been miserable. And if we had backtracked and tried to make it to South Dakota, say, we were going there, we have to go there, we would have missed North Dakota, right? So and missed that wonderful park. So I think that you just have to kind of roll with sort of what life gives you, and sort of trying to turn those mistakes into something that is not that much of a mistake.
Afterwards, you're like, see, this is what I intended to do.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I was trying to get us here.
Except when it doesn't work, and then you can't really say that.
That's right. You grasp the ones that
Right.
do. And when they don't, you say, but remember when we ended up?
Back then, yeah, when you roll in and it's dark, there's no camp spots, there's, you're hungry, you're tired, there's nowhere to park. It's just, we've had a couple of those days.
So forewarning, if this hasn't happened to you yet, this has only happened to me in Utah. I don't know if they do this elsewhere. If you roll into certain campsites too late, they close them, and you can't get into the campsite at all. I've never run into that prior to Utah just earlier this year.
We actually saw that a lot in British Columbia. Their provincial parks, they lock the gates from like 11 p.m. until 6 in the morning, which is a problem if you show up late or if you're trying to leave really early.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it's a huge liability issue because, like, let's say, you have an emergency and you need some sort of, to get out in the middle of the night. Like, I don't know. It seems like there's no one there to let me out. And
well, what I saw is the ones I saw in Utah, you could get out. They just had those spikes that will slash your tires if you try to go in that way.
Okay. Now, we saw, like, fully locked up gates with, like, no one there to, like, man them. So you were, like, now locked in until the morning.
So what happened to me is I was forced to sleep in my car next to a campground because the gate was locked. It just made no sense to me. So be aware of that. But clearly you've come across it, so you're prepared.
Yeah, no,
and you're already sleeping in your car, so it's a little more comfortable for you.
Yeah, there's some weird. The camping is just different everywhere. I think we had gotten really good at camping in the United States. We've camped a lot in national forests where you don't need to be, necessarily in a campsite. You just need to kind of be somewhere BLM land. Also, you can camp without actually having to have. So there's a lot of free camping that we sort of had a good read on. We could see a map and say, okay, we could probably camp here. There's some logging roads up here. We can probably camp up there. And then you get to Canada, and the whole thing's different now. Now nothing is the same. So they've got provincial parks, they've got crowned land, and we had to relearn a little bit.
But they're really nice to you.
They're really nice.
So when you do something wrong, they apologize that they're having to tell you did it wrong, so it's okay.
Yeah, I think what we found is that everyone is very nice, and that enforcement is very low up there. That it's a big country.
Yeah, there's more country than people.
Yeah, there's not enough, local law enforcement to go around and make sure that you're, parked properly, or that you shouldn't be on this logging road, or something like that. So I think that we were a little bit overly cautious in the beginning, and then I think we loosened up a bit and got into the Canadian rhythm of things.
So if you're sleeping in the car most of the time, where do you tend to park the car? Because depending on where you are, that could be difficult. Or is there a secret you don't want to share?
Well, in terms of like where to park,
in case the law enforcement's chasing you from border to border.
We've never had to knock on the door or knock on the window in the middle of the night, thankfully. No, we've found that a lot of these forest roads, very infrequently traveled. There's usually turnoffs all over the place up there. When you're on the desert, these BLM land, it's just sort of like, you can kind of go wherever you'd like. We've on occasion, had to do, I guess some people would term urban camping, when you're just relocating from one place to another, and you have to kind of park the car and sleep somewhere that is
like a Walmart.
Or
a
truck stop or a rest stop.
Well, truck stops are great because they expect you to do that,
right? Yeah, and they have like clean bathrooms.
The tricky thing is when it's someone's neighborhood, which I've done, and you try to find the spot where maybe the streetlight's not hitting you so much.
Yeah, we did that once in Portland, and I can't say that I am looking forward to having to do that again.
I think that in a different vehicle, it may be okay, but in a two-door hatchback, in which basically you have to we've got felt panels that we put up in the windows to kind of block out light and to have a little privacy from people, but it definitely is not the ideal vehicle for urban camping. We do much better, and we feel much better about ourselves when we're out amongst other campers.
Yeah.
I think that there's becomes this very strange line that happens when a camper comes into the city, very unclear whether or not you're homeless or not, and you're unclear about your role now in society.
Right.
But if you were to be out at a campsite next to a picnic table, no one would even question what you're doing. It's like, oh, yeah, you're sleeping there in your car? That's great. Or you have a sleeping bag? Oh, that's fine. But you just don't have that in the city.
Right. So you mentioned the car again. As you said, It's maybe not the ideal car for some situations. I did hear you say you have chains now.
We do have
So
chains.
have you had difficulties with getting over snowy passes or really steep mountains or anything like that?
We had quite the ordeal getting out of Colorado.
Yes.
That may have encouraged us to get a set of chains. So we were in the Denver area. Our plan was to cross the Rockies, to go into southern Utah, and spend the last week of our trip before coming into Los Angeles hanging around Canyonlands. But then we saw that there was this big snowstorm coming, so we decided let's head south a little bit. We wanted to see the Great Sand Dunes. We did that. This storm shows up, and the sand dunes are actually kind of in this depression that is surrounded by mountains on all sides. And so this snowstorm shows up, and the only way out of Colorado is to cross some mountain pass, whether it's, across into Durango or back up into Denver or south to New Mexico. Yeah. And so, we decided to go through Durango, and so we show up, drive we drive west and get to the base of the pass and realize this is just not going to happen. It's snow is packed on the road.
Yeah,
and
it's Wolf Creek Pass, which is apparently pretty gnarly. And
yeah.
the further and further we went up, the worse the conditions got. You start seeing these light trailers flipped over on the side of the road. That's the good sign that you just need to not do this.
Yeah, so we turned around and we decided to go back through this other pass to the east and go down into New Mexico, which we did make it across, although we found out that later that day after we passed it, the entire 25 closed down at that pass. So we just made it out. And then even driving down the 40 into Albuquerque, we had to pull over at some point because there was the blizzard was still happening, and we had to sleep at a Walmart that night in a blizzard because we just couldn't make it over.
The car looked like an igloo at the end of it, completely covered in snow, and we're inside of this thing. It was amazing. Yeah, no, the car, it's driving in the snow is something that I'm somewhat familiar with. I'm from Connecticut, and we have got snow, but the thing that Connecticut has is that it's incredibly flat. The whole
Which Colorado is the opposite of
going
flat.
Up and down and turns and big steep drop-offs, that really raises the stakes tremendously when you're driving in inclement weather. After that in Colorado, we have to get chains for this thing. So we have picked up chains, we have used them.
Even that can be frightening on
Yeah.
these
Right.
mountain roads in a little car.
Well, I think that it perhaps could give you this false sense of confidence that I've got chains on, I can, do whatever. It's it's not really it's not like super glue. You're not held to the road.
You're still in a little Ford Focus trying to putt up the mountains. I was in that Durango, Ouray, Silverton area earlier this summer, and I specifically thought, I don't want to drive my car through this in the winter.
Yeah, it's gnarly. So.
Yeah. And from the best that we can determine, it looks like out here in the West, when there's snow or a storm rolling through, they don't run plows constantly. They just wait till the snow dumps and then they run the plow. Whereas I think on the East Coast, since there's a lot more people, they're just running these plows constantly. Where this, just as it's starting to come down, they're running a plow. Again, it's great not having a timeline because now we can kind of divert or wait out something or all right, this is just not our day. So we've only been caught by the weather a couple times. But on the second leg of the trip, I don't really anticipate, unless we have some real big, I don't know what can go wrong in Texas. Could be an armadillo stampede or something, but we'll try to avoid any other major issues.
Yeah, beware the armadillo stampedes. The armadillo stampede of 1984 was quite a horrible,
bad one.
So you're back on the road very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And where was it you said you're heading to next?
The Southwest. We're going to start off.
Southwest.
Yeah, February. We'll be in Arizona and New Mexico, which I think really for the desert area is one of the better times to see it. I know it's just impossible to do in the summertime. It's just too hot everywhere. So yeah, we'll be doing that, and then sometime spring-ish be rolling through Texas into the south. We're going to try to go. We're going to try to get into Florida for a bit and try to kind of see the redeeming aspects of Florida. I'm sure there are some in there. And then East Coast and then up. So I think summertime will be somewhere on in the New England area.
Any must-visit places that are on your list?
Near term, there's some gorgeous stuff out in southern Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. There's the White Sand Dunes. I would love to go see that. there's definitely, I've seen a lot of this stuff in southern Utah, but I never had gotten to like really see it or hike around or like spend the time there. So we've done like the drive-by of Bryce, of Moab and Zion, but it'd be cool to kind of like hang out there for a little while and check it out.
Yeah, I think it might be a little further north than we were maybe planning to go, but I would love to see the Ozarks in Missouri.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. And then I think Appalachia is just going to be really neat to hike around in. And
yeah, we'll probably be somewhere around the Appalachian Trail when they start running it in Georgia, probably. So we'll probably see a little bit of the run up to that, which will be interesting. But yeah, so this is what we talk about in the car. Just sort of this like, very, just musings about, we could go here. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to see this? So
yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. So you're both spending a lot of time together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Has
that been trying?
Why don't you go, honey?
Yeah, so we actually just realized that, so Michael is flying home to the East Coast tomorrow morning, and that's going to be the first time that we have spent any amount of time apart in the last
like out of
4
arm's
months.
reach, basically.
Yeah.
Like, that's how close we've been this entire time.
So we've definitely spent more time together than I think we ever would have had the opportunity to if we didn't take the trip, which has been really, really cool. I think that not many people have the ability to spend this much time with their partner and doing something like this together, and I think makes some people really uncomfortable to think about doing that. We've had a couple of people say like, I would never be able to do that with my wife or husband or whatever. But it's been really cool. I think that we've gotten to really get to know each other in a way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. We've been able to, learn how to work through challenges that come up, whether it's, where the heck are we staying tonight, or what should we do with the next week of our lives, or whatever. Being able to work together and figure out how to communicate through that has been really, really cool. So we haven't had any like big issues with it. I think it's been like a really great gift that we've given each other time, right?
Yeah, time to just sort of be with each other. I think that when you're working a job, you spend 40 plus hours a week at the job, and then you're sleeping for, a good part of your week. Like, you only get to see the person that you're with for, these periods of time. You see them from the weekends. And to see someone like all the time and be with them all the time, you really kind of, we've gotten now to a point where like, we're completing each other's sentences. We're kind of thinking what the other one is thinking, because you can kind of sometimes really like, sync up.
This really like gross couple thing. Like,
yeah. We're just like, all right.
We're that couple now.
Are you dressing alike yet?
No, although we have a very limited wardrobe, obviously, the small vehicle, we have got like 3 different outfits that we can be wearing. So.
I guess one of the nice things is you're solving the same problems. So you're not spending time together solving your own problems. You both have the same problems to solve.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is either going to bring you together or push you apart.
Right.
So it sounds like it's working in your favor.
Yeah, it's definitely brought us together.
And there's stuff like we both need to figure out, right? Like, where are we sleeping tonight? That is a group discussion, right? Or what do you want to eat? Or what do we want to eat, right? That's a collective sort of thing to talk about. Yeah, it's just, you have to work through all these different things. And then also running this sort of website, the Fresh Off the Grid, that is also a joint venture, a creative venture. Mm-hmm. That now we get to work together and work creatively together, in addition to just sort of the logistical day-to-day sort of stuff. When you put both of that together, I think that you just end up really sort of spending a lot of time like figuring out how to communicate, how to work together as a team, and how to try to minimize some of the friction points that come up. I think that we've gotten pretty good at that, or at least we got pretty good at like identifying friction points, which is namely when both of us have neglected to eat. So like,
oh yeah, I think that's everybody.
Yeah,
when you're hungry,
it's just it's almost like a broke. You can see it coming. Like, this again. I know this. We shouldn't. Like, we
I
needed
know
to
better.
Eat. Skipping breakfast is never a good idea. So yeah, I mean, those are like It's like, oh yeah, we should not do that anymore. Right? So stuff like that, you can just sort of continue. It's a process where you just keep working on it and you keep getting better and better at it.
So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about hygiene. So how are you managing that?
So we actually have this really great contraption. It's the Helio Shower by Nemo equipment, and it packs down to pretty small, and you can fill it up, and it has like a pressure pump and so you can use that as a shower. It has enough water pressure that I can like wash my hair with it. So we'll like boil some water and throw it in there and shower at the campsite.
In the summer months, it was great. You know, it's one of these like solar showers. So you set it up on top of the roof of the car or on the picnic table, leave it there during the day, and you come back and it's actually pretty hot. When it got cooler out, you just, we have a jet boil thing of water, dump it in there, maybe 2 if it's really cold out. And so that's been great. But then also, we have met up with friends on the trip, so you have showers there. In the summertime, it was great. There's just rivers and streams and lakes, and you're just
like jumping into every
body of water you can find. But then in the wintertime, it gets a little bit tougher. And then when you are in a pinch, nothing beats a wet wipe. It's just like sometimes that's just what you need to kind of feel like you can go to sleep tonight. Like you're not like just lying in a pile of dirt. You just have to wipe. So it's a mix. I think your standards go down a little bit for what is clean.
Are you using any of the showers provided in certain camp areas, or like the pay showers, anything like that?
Oh yeah. If there's a pay shower anywhere near where we are taking advantage of that.
Kind of far and few between, but yeah, when they are there, we definitely go for them.
First time I stayed in Yosemite, we stayed for a week. We decided towards the end, we heard there were pay showers at Curry Village, and man, that shower felt great.
Yeah, yeah, no, there's something really nice about that. In Canada, in the national parks, they've got unlimited free showers, hot showers.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yeah, it's very nice of them. So that was a real blessing.
It was a treat.
To be able to have that. But yeah, in the U.S., there's not a ton of paid showers everywhere. We found that as sort of the issue is that there's plenty of places to go to the bathroom. There's public restrooms everywhere. But if you need to take a shower, it can be tough sometimes.
Yeah, I found that too, yeah.
And it's a strange thing. It's also like laundry. People have asked us before already, like there's laundromats everywhere. It's very easy to do a load of laundry in any city, anywhere. But to get a decent shower, that really is can be somewhat of a challenge. So we haven't got the perfect system, the cold weather system. In the summertime, I think we're totally self-sufficient. But yeah, in the cold weather, I don't know exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
I guess you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Either that or you drive with the windows down.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people would hear this and they would think, man, I wouldn't mind doing that. I wouldn't mind quitting my job and driving around the U.S. Are there any tips you have for people out there? Anything that you've learned where you're like, don't do this, absolutely do this, or hey, here's the process. Start it, go, do this step, right. This step.
I think for a lot of people that we've talked to, the biggest sticking point is like, how did you guys break free of your job and all of that? Like, it's really hard to, walk away from basically like your entire life as you know it and hit the road for an indefinite period of time. So, and for that, like, there's a lot of people that can work remotely and all of that, and I think that that's awesome. But I think for a lot of us, we saved a lot to make the trip happen. And I think that if anyone is interested in doing a trip, like having that kind of savings to make it happen is really great. And so that's kind of like step one, I think, is to make sure that you're making that sort of priority. And then you just have to kind of decide to go. That was like the hardest part for us. We talked about it for months, and we would get to a point where one of us would be like, okay, let's do it. And the other would be like, no, let's hang on. I think something's going to turn around at work or whatever. And then, so we'd talk ourselves out of it. And then, a month or two later, the other person would be like, okay, no, now I'm ready to go. And it just kind of went back and forth. And finally, one day we synced up and we're like, okay, like,
let's do it.
It's happening. And then we just decided to go. It was actually pretty easy in the end.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people that want to do a trip like this, there's always this, I don't know, there's a sense to say to yourself, well, the perfect time to do it was sometime in the past. Between high school and college, I should have done it. Or when I was in college, or this year after college, I didn't have responsibilities. Or before, I had this job, which now is a little more serious, before I got the good apartment. There's all these times in the past that would be the ideal time because it feels very safe in the past. But really, I think that the time for us, we got to the idea like the best time to do it is now. You just have to start at a certain point and say, look, this is going to be a radical life change and it's going to be slightly uncomfortable, but this is something that we really want to do, and that we just need to kind of like do it. You kind of find different ways to kind of make that work, because I think that we were most fearful of is just the indefinitely deferring our dream to some point in the future, that we'll do it later, a trip like this, you could do that in retirement. It seems almost absurd to be, here in our late 20s, early 30s, like saying to ourselves, we're going to get to that when we're 65. That's like, I don't know. It's just like, it's crazy to think that you're going to like put off something that you really, really feel passionate about till like a point in time that you may not get to. It's not guaranteed that you're going to make it all the way to, retirement.
And you may totally change your mind by that point and no longer be interested in that.
Certainly.
Absolutely. Or, we're doing a lot of hiking and, stuff like that. And who knows if we do make it to 65, if we'll be able-bodied. And so I think that you just can't take it for granted that you're going to show up, in 40 years and be able to do this thing that you want to do. So
yeah, so I think that's a big part of it. And then I think also just finding a trip that works for you, right? I mean, for us, right, we're in this car, which lacks a lot of amenities and maybe not what certain people need for a trip, right? I think that you can do it for much cheaper than we're doing it, right? We're actually, I think we could do it even cheaper. That there's all different ways of doing a trip like this, and I think that scaling it to what you think that you want and what you can afford to do, and I think that's a big part of it too. And then sort of that removes a lot of the barriers. When you take like the Mac Daddy Sprinter van out of the equation, you're just going to go with your car, then all of a sudden now it seems way more achievable, not this big scary thing that you can't do. I think, just like kind of figuring out what trip you want to take and what you can sort of envision yourself doing and starting from there, really.
I think that's a good spot for us to wrap everything up. If people want to keep up with what you're doing, obviously they can go to freshoffthegrid.com, correct?
Yep.
.com.
How else can they keep up with you? Is there Instagram, Twitter, any of those things?
Yeah,
where do you want people to go to keep up with what's going on?
So we're most active on Instagram. Our handle is Fresh Off the Grid, although we do have Twitter and Facebook and Stellar, and that we're also Fresh Off the Grid on all of those platforms.
Many ways to choose from.
Are you updating those things on the road, or?
Yeah. So it's sort of the semi-irony of the whole thing is that we're fresh off the grid, but we have to actually come back on the grid
fairly
regularly to share the good news of what we were doing off the grid. So yeah, freshoffthegrid.com on it's an interesting trying to run something online while being outdoors. There's always some sense that like there's a little bit of a you're missing it a little bit.
It's hard to run a website when you're homeless.
Right, it's true, right. So anyways, it's interesting though. But yeah, we are on all of those. We are fairly active on most, but Instagram is definitely what we interface with the most.
All right, well now that it's starting to get cooler in this park, let's get to warmer climates.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having us.
I hope you were paying attention there at the end of the conversation because there were some gems of wisdom there. Please take this, if nothing else, away from this episode. Don't make excuses, find solutions. That's what Megan and Michael have done, and I think they are better off for having done so. And I think that advice will carry you far in life, regardless, whether you want to live out of your car, whether you have ambitions in a career field, or even in regards to just your day-to-day family life. Stop making excuses, people. Start finding solutions. I'll stop that there before I start sounding like an inspirational speaker at your local high school. And let's get to some updates. Megan and Michael are back on the road, and they've been busy. So here to tell you all about that is show favorite Erica.
Yeah, so we've got a bit going on. We started moving a lot slower, which has really helped the tempo of the trip. We thought we would be in New Orleans by this time, but we're only in Sedona, Arizona. Also, yeah, we're going to Cuba. We're still not entirely sure how that all happened, but it is. We entered a contest by video sharing app Facet and won one ticket. Then we had to negotiate with the tour operator to reduce the price of the second ticket, and then we pre-sold some freelance articles to cover some of the remaining expenses. In the end, we're still paying to go to Cuba, just at a reduced rate. Should be an amazing experience, though. We can't wait. So yeah, that's what's going on with us. We'll be back in LA for the flights out in the next week, and then the road trip continues. At this rate, we'll be on the East Coast on 2019-2020. Ha! Just kidding.
So just to verify, that was not Michael Van Vliet. That was master impersonator Erica. Thank you, Erica.
You're welcome.
And now is the time to go to the website, gogetoutside.com/podcast. Take a look at episode 26, Fresh Off the Grid. There you will find all kinds of rad pictures that they've taken while they've been on the road, along with a bunch of links to freshoffthegrid.com. They have all sorts of cool recipes there. They have guides to different areas, and then they have even more photos than what I've included on the website. Also, links to their Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can follow them in any of those areas and keep up with what they are doing on the road. At one point during the conversation, we discussed fire lookout towers and how a lot of them in the area you can stay for a night or rent them. I found a couple places online where you can find local lookout towers and rent them yourself, so you too can go stay in a lookout tower somewhere. And a link to the Helio Shower. Michael and Megan discussed it, and I figure a lot of you are probably interested in shower solutions, so I included that. And since every one of you listening to this is running to your computer machine right now, or maybe your phone, maybe you don't have a computer machine, maybe you do everything off of a tablet or phone device. But since I know all of you are running to those devices right now and heading over to gogetoutside.com because you just have to get to these show links, you cannot continue with your life until you've done so, do me another favor while you're there online. Send us an email, go@butcherbirdstudios.com. Tell us anything you want to. Good things, bad things, secret things. Or maybe you don't like typing. Maybe you have big fat fingers and you can't hit the buttons, and every time you try to type the word from, you type the word form. Or maybe your name is Jason and you misspell it Jaosn every time you try to type it. Well, you don't have to worry about that if you want to speak with us. You don't have to misspell my name and misspell from. You can call us, 818-925-0106. You can leave us a voicemail up to 3 minutes, or you can call us 50 times and leave us 150 minutes worth of voicemails. And while you're at it, stop by iTunes, Stitcher, whatever you use to consume this audio delight. Make sure you're subscribed. And while you're there, rate the show, and maybe even review the show. I will send you a virtual kiss if you do so. Next time on the show, April 16th, come back 2 weeks from now,
Shantae Salabert.
She is a writer, an educator, a brand ambassador, a backpacker, and a human Yogi Bear. Next time on the show. See you then.